All right, everybody, welcome to the Thursday edition of Locked On NHL. I'm Chris Maselli from Locked On Avalanche with Adam Denker, as always, from Locked On Lightning. We have a power ranking to get to, which we will. We have, for the third straight week, a third different number one team, and for the third straight week, a third different bottom number 32 team. So we will get into that, as well as Mr. Phil Kessel breaking a record, and just coaches in general. Why are we so early in the season already talking about firing some coaches? Let's get into it.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Thursday edition of Locked On NHL. I am Chris Maselli from Locked On Avalanche. With me, as always, Mr. Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. It's always appreciated. If it's Thursday, we have power rankings to get to. And as I stated in the beginning, I love the early season because teams are all over the place. So there's teams that have fallen even further from some cataclysmic falling from the previous week. And of course, there are some teams that are rising. So you get a lot of movement early on in the season before things start to settle down. So we'll get to those in a minute, but we have to start. And whenever there's a record that's broken, you kind of have to start with that. And that is Mr. Phil Kessel. I mean, if there's a guy out there that you just didn't think was going to have an Iron Man streak, I think it would have to be Phil Kessel. I think he's deceiving as if to just look at him and all of the hot dog memes. And yeah, he's not the most stoutly man in terms of being in shape, but he is in shape. And I think that's the misconception of him. Like he's not a guy that you can't be out of shape and play this sport year in and year out and not miss a game. So what's your thoughts on the record that Mr. Phil Kessel just broke?
Always been. I mean, I'll just start off by saying always been a fan of Phil Kessel. I think he really won me over back to his time in Toronto, when he was really, let's face it, the only good player on those teams, and just got a ton of abuse for not being able to carry that team to a Stanley Cup, which will inevitably be the same fate for Austin Matthews at some point.
Sick burn.
Yeah. So, but no, he's one of those guys. Absolutely. Probably the last guy we assumed would break a record of that would consist of longevity, and probably one of the most unassuming stat breakers in NHL history. So I guess he has that under his belt. But I mean, yeah, and we were talking about this before we hit record, Chris. I'm not a big fan of the consecutive games played. I mean, a record is a record. That's great. Maybe once, like if he gets to 1,000, I'll be like, okay, that's really cool.
He's going to do that in like 10 games, ain't he?
Yeah. So in 10 games, Chris, we'll be back on this show, and I'll have the confetti,
and then you'll be
impressed.
impressed.
Then I'll be impressed.
Okay.
It takes a lot. You can't just hit 990 and think I'm going to be absolutely ecstatic. No, but it's a good record for him to have. I mean, it's something to have under their belt. I mean, listen, it's an accomplishment that's great, and we all know how rigorous the NHL season and just how incredibly taxing on the body a career can be. So yeah, I mean, it is, in the overall scheme of things, a great record, but I just feel like in recent years, I mean, I'll pull up the list right now on my end. Phil Kessel, obviously, and then you have Keith Yandel, Doug Jarvis, who held the record for a very long time. So all right, that's cool. And then you got Patrick Marleau, and then Andrew Cogliano, one of the most another name that pops out, and then you got Brett Burns also as well, who's kind of climbing up that list right now. But
okay.
I'm not discrediting any of these players, and this might be a hot topic for some of our listeners, especially on YouTube. So if you want to kill me on YouTube in the comments below, go ahead. I'm all for it. If you want to tweet to me how ridiculous I sound, Danky Dank, DENKYD8NK at Twitter.
Burner
I
accounts are
just
being created as we speak.
exactly can't
Yeah.
wait. Uh, take on all challengers,
So,
but I
so
just
what's your
I don't
issue with it?
know.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with it. It just
Mhm.
doesn't do it for me. You know, it's just
Really?
I'm just indifferent
See,
about it.
man, like I'm the opposite end of it. I'm impressed by it, especially with the way sports are played today. Their guys are bigger, faster, stronger, and
Yeah,
your likelihood of getting injured goes through the roof. So guys that can play day in and day out and be that reliable
yeah,
night in and night out, that you know they're going to be there, and you take that for granted because they could not be there. You know,
yeah,
and the way that sports are played right now, from the athlete side, like I said, bigger, stronger, faster. But from the coaching side, I mean, in every sport, maybe except for football, because every single game is so important.
yeah,
All the other sports, guys are just getting rest days. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like in baseball, Ripken's streak is never going to be broken,
yeah,
ever. And I'm pretty confident in saying that because guys just get rest days.
yeah.
I don't know who holds the record in the NBA, but it's probably never going
AC
to get
Green,
broken.
AC Green.
Okay. It'll probably
Yeah,
never get broken, whatever it is. Like this is a big deal. Like you don't see guys getting like rest days like you do in like baseball and stuff like that in hockey, but it happens from time to time.
right.
Even if it doesn't happen, just the injuries are always there. So um, I think it's impressive, and it's one of those things we might never ever see it broken again, ever. So
I
that's why it's impressive to me, is just because it's not done all the time. I mean, look at the difference between who was the guy that held it forever?
um
Uh,
let me pick it up.
yeah, I completely
Jarvis,
forgot it.
Doug
Yes,
Jarvis.
yes, Jarvis. So I mean, he held it forever ago, and then you've had two guys who were kind of, obviously on the same trajectory with Yandel. Do you think it takes away a little bit because Yandel just did this last year, and then
I think that's
the beginning of the next season, that record's already broken? I mean, they're always obviously always hand in hand, those two guys,
yeah,
just kind of playing, basically parallel to each other. And whenever Yandel his streak stopped, I mean,
yeah.
everybody knew that Kessel was right behind him, but I don't know. I just don't think it's going to get broken, or we'll see it again. It's impressive to me.
Well, yeah, I think you brought up a good point. I think that's maybe why I feel the way I do. I mean, we just saw Yandel do this last year, and then now
Yep.
we have Kessel doing it. Would you feel that way also about like another record? Like hypothetically speaking, we got, Connor McDavid breaks Wayne Gretzky's single season goal record this year, and
Mhm.
then next year Austin Matthews does it. I mean, wouldn't that
Well,
kind of take away a little bit of maybe the luster and the specialness surrounding it just a tad bit?
because it got broken.
Because it got
Like,
broken in consecutive years. I know it's obviously
oh,
we're
okay.
comparing completely different kinds of, in terms of just importance of records
It
here,
is. I
but,
think it's a little bit different because like I said, Yandel and Kessel were going about this all along. You know what I mean? If you
yeah.
have someone break Gretzky's record, and then the very next year it's done again by somebody else, then you have to look at the game and just be like, okay, is the style of is the play on ice changing? Because a record that nobody was even touching, guys in back to back seasons have broken it. So I think you have to
Right, but
look
you
at it
could
at
say,
a different way.
but Chris, you could say the same thing about this record because you could make the excuse, well, it's gotten broken in consecutive years because the sports medicine, the training, the facilities have gotten better.
They had, but
Doug
mm,
Jarvis wasn't getting, the kind of care that, we're getting today from these guys. I mean, he was climbing into an ice bath after the game, and that's pretty
yeah,
much it. Maybe rubbing some Bengay on his bruises and sores, and that's pretty much it.
right. um, I think that's true for the latter stages of both Yandel and Kessel, but they started these streaks how long ago? At the beginning of these streaks, was that the case? I mean, the medicine has gotten better, and um, the facilities have gotten better as they've gone along. But I don't think that's the sole reason why they're staying healthy. You got to play the game a certain way. To not get injured is a skill. That's as much as a skill as to play the game of hockey. And one could argue Phil Kessel. the way that he does not get injured is he doesn't play defense. I'm not going to argue that because the guy really doesn't. But you're playing the game of hockey for 1,000 games straight. I'm impressed that you haven't gotten injured.
All right, I just brought up something real quick. I just out of curiosity, and I will eat my words a little bit, having seen this because it it does kind of, I guess, make kind of open my eyes a little bit. So there's an article. It was on HockeyAnswer.com. The average amount of games that a player plays in his career in the NHL is 323.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's
so
just
he's
the
done
average
3
amount.
times that amount.
Yeah, so
Nonstop.
I mean,
It's,
but I
it's
feel like
impressive.
maybe over the course, maybe like in 5 years from now, we'll obviously where he's going to hit 1,000 this season. Maybe in 5-10 years from now, maybe like you said, people won't even sniff this. Maybe, I mean, I don't think we're going to see kind of like the resting that we see in other sports that we'll see in the NHL. I would be shocked if it comes down to that. But
Yeah.
I mean, people will get close. I think we'll see players down the line get close here and there. But I don't know. I just feel like maybe just back-to-back years, it's just lost a little bit of its specialness to me, at least.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
agree to disagree.
I'm not easily
Yeah.
impressed. No, that's also me.
And like with Ovechkin approaching the Gretzky record for goals, like to me, like I don't know. I kind of look at it in the beginning. I'm like, I don't want him to beat that record because Gretzky to me is the greatest athlete of all time. I don't want him to beat it. But as like it's going on, I'm like, well, we would be alive and covering the sport when it happens. That's
Right.
pretty special too.
Yeah.
So it's which method do you want? So I don't know. I like seeing records being broken, and I used to not. I always thought like the sport was better back then, and as I've gotten older, I've just been like, no, like it's impressive that those guys set those records, and it's taken this long to beat them, and now we get to witness those getting beat because when all these Gretzky records were being made, I was a teenager and didn't really appreciate it. So now that it's going to get broke, or maybe I tend to appreciate that it is what it is, and I'll be here and witnessing it now in my 40s. So
How
yes,
have you grown with age, Chris? I'm so proud
I
of you.
have. Yeah. Yep. And another gray just came in. So I want to get into a discussion about coaches too quickly because I always get a kick out of how early in the season we are. After 2 or 3 games, teams that don't start off so hot. Not that teams are firing coaches, but you're hearing like the chirping. You definitely hear it from the fan base. You hear it on social media. It doesn't happen. I mean, it happens. It does happen where a team within like the first week will fire their coach. I just never understood that. And you're hearing it again this year for all these teams that are off to a rough start. And it's just because of social media and stuff like that. The fans have such a voice, and you're hearing about all they want these coaches fired. What's kind of your take on this early in the year? It kind of drives me crazy.
Well, I said this on my show. I actually did a segment yesterday on Locked On Lightning. You know, at what point in the season is it not too early to be or not feel dramatic about a certain take or feeling that you have about the way your team is playing? I mean, Chris, you and I have spoken multiple times on this show through our ranking segment, kind of setting the timeline almost. You say Thanksgiving is when you kind of get a feel as to what kind of team you're going to be for the rest of the year. I say New Year's, but maybe that's kind of like the sweet spot for like what you're going to get at that point. I guess by Thanksgiving is what your team's going to be. I mean, yeah, you could be frustrated with the way your team's playing. Obviously, perfect example right now, Vancouver is just abysmal. But the GM came out, totally supports Brudeau, which he should. And the people coming out and saying, already starting the Barry Trotz conversation. It's a little it's a little silly because you're playing 2 weeks and it's like you've played 5 games. I mean, this isn't like when Barry Melrose was the coach of the Lightning and got fired after 7 games, It's that I that was a little bit of a crazy thing within itself, but I just feel like those people, well, I'm not gonna criticize these fans, I mean, to a certain extent, but I feel like let your players figure it out, It's gonna
Yeah,
take a while for teams to figure it out. I mean, if I was in the same boat about that, I could say, "Let's fire John Cooper right now." And
you
obviously, I'm
should.
not gonna say yeah. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you made it to three straight Stanley Cups, and now your team's off to a terrible start in the first 2 weeks. Why does he still have a job? I mean, by that metric, it's just like nobody's gonna be around. But you know, for like with like you said, Tortorella got fired those 7 games into the season.
Barry Melrose was,
Oh,
but
I'm
that
sorry,
was like
Barry
that was
Melrose.
between
Yes, Barry
that was
Melrose. Barry Melrose.
yeah,
I'm sorry. Tortorella probably has been fired. It's one of the 12 teams that he's coached within
and
within
s and still showed
7
up.
games. But still, Melrose. Okay, yeah, that just doesn't make sense. Like, why wait for the season to start? Like, if you're already
Yeah,
thinking that, why wasn't it done, a couple weeks
yeah,
earlier in the off season? So I don't think teams really go. You don't see it a lot. Yes, it's a good
yeah.
example with Melrose, but even like Lindy Ruff over in New Jersey, the crowd after the second game is chanting "Fire Lindy," and it's
Well,
like, oh my,
I
like,
think I think that's because the Jets and the Giants are playing so well right now, and those same fan
oh,
bases
dude,
are wonder yeah.
settle down, Jet and Giant fans. You haven't been here in a while.
My
Uh,
Giants 6-1, but this ain't a
yeah.
football
Oh,
podcast.
now they're your
What
Giants. Last year they were somebody else's Giants, but this year they're your Giants. Okay,
Yeah, okay. All right.
continue.
Well, let's
Continue.
ride.
I
So
I, I have nothing to
yeah,
back up on that.
exactly.
Yeah, my team
How
is
about those
terrible.
Broncos doing? Now
Who?
the Broncos are
I don't
terrible.
know.
You could work on that novel. So
Yeah, I can
getting
work out
back to
on the
what we were
plane
saying.
too. Yeah.
Exactly. So what I'm trying to get at is that, and what I think should be the only reason to fire a head coach this early in the season is if I don't if he has done something illegal off the
Okay. Right.
ice,
Good
or
point.
there's just complete dysfunction in the dressing room.
Yeah.
Just absolutely, the owner GM shows up to practice, they're just skating around doing nothing, and they're not doing drills or whatever, no emotion, whatever. Then that's obviously a problem. Or a high level team like the Lightning. Let's say they had a terrible year last year, didn't make the playoffs, and then they start off like this. Yeah, the conversation could be had, but this is this is Vancouver, who
Mhm.
was in a rough spot midway through last year. Brudeau comes in, pretty much revives that team back from the grave, and they have some sort of a chance to make some sort of threat for a playoff position. And now they're off to a little bit of a rough start, which is, in my opinion, I think a very competitive division.
Mhm.
Give the guy till Christmas and then reevaluate. I just think I think
Wait a
this
minute.
is not so I think this is not so much more about him or any other coach that is having a rough season to start. I think it's more so a lot of people want to see Barry Trotz back in the game. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. I think we all like Trotz, but he had an opportunity. That
Yeah.
Winnipeg position was his for the taking, and he didn't want it. He just I feel like he needed a year off. So I think we will definitely see him again. You saw that thing on NHL.com that you pointed me to that said an original
Yeah,
six team would pique his interest, but I don't think there's going to be any original six teams available. I think all of those
yeah.
coaches are kind of set.
And he already
So,
stated that he doesn't, if even if it's out of the original 6 team, he doesn't want to go to Canada or New York. So that really leaves you slim pickings. And yeah, like you said,
geez, yeah,
those remaining teams out of the original six all just hired a head coach.
yeah.
And one of those teams, Boston, currently is the best team statistically in the league right now. So
That is a segue, my friend, into
segue.
into the power rankings for this week. We are going to get to those right after we hear from Bet Online and betonline.net. There we go. BetOnline.net, your number one source for betting football and the start of a new basketball season and the Major League Baseball World Series. Who you got in that, Denker?
Oh, the Astros, man. I mean, I'm a
Well,
Mets
I should
fan.
say,
I can't even stomach the Phillies winning the World Series right now.
are the Astros like they got to be a heavy favorite, right?
Oh, 100%,
Right?
man.
Because I mean, I
Yeah.
know they're a good team. I don't really follow the Phillies that much. Are Phillies kind of like did they like sneak in there or
Yeah, they
were they
were
like a
I
wild
believe
card
if
team?
they were the last wild card team to get in.
Really? So this could get ugly. But who do you
Yeah.
root for? Because I don't think any like there's no like rooting. If you don't have rooting interest, it seems like you hate both of these teams because you
Well,
don't want to see Houston keep winning, and nobody outside of Philly really likes the Philly team. So I don't know. Who do you go for here, man?
I mean, you just root for good old fashioned American played baseball. You just root
There
for
you
the
go.
great America's pastime. That's what you root for.
That's what you do. Ken Burns baseball documentary, best thing ever made.
7 parts. Let's
Love
go.
it. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis for every game. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. That's betonline.net, where the game starts. All right, sir. So we have a power ranking to get to. I'm going to load it up if you are watching on YouTube. Let's go full screen with that now. Let's move some stuff around here so we can build it. There we go. If you are not and you're listening in your car or at home, we'll go through them. I'll let you know where teams stand. But our top 10 goes like this. New York Rangers drop from 3 to number 10. Toronto Maple Leafs move up 2 spots to number 9. Florida Panthers move up 1 spot to number 8. Vegas Golden Knights move up 1 spot to number 7. Colorado Avalanche stand pat at number 6. The Carolina Hurricanes move down from 2 to 5. The Dallas Stars stand pat at number 4. The Calgary Flames were number 1 last week. They're number 3 this week. The Pittsburgh Penguins go from number 5 to number 2. And your new number 1 for a third straight week, we have a different number 1. The Boston Bruins go from number 7 to number 1. So I don't want to start there, though, because as the Bruins are our third different number 1 in as many weeks, we have our third different number 32 in as many weeks. And it's the Vancouver Canucks. We were just talking about Bruce Boudreau and the Canucks and how they've just got off to a horrible start, but it's not because they're getting blown out. It's because they're blowing leads. And they have now they lost the first 4 games where they had a 2-goal lead. First time in NHL history that's ever happened. When they had 3 games in a row, that was the first time that's ever happened. But they tacked on another one, and now they've played 7 games and have yet to win one. And I don't think, as we're recording this, they are playing today. No, they are not. So they're not playing today. They're not playing. I say today. That's Wednesday. We're recording this Wednesday night. They're not playing Thursday night. No, they are playing Thursday against Seattle. So that's when they can try to get their first win. 5-2 for Vancouver. This was a team that a lot of people liked how they finished last year, and that just goes to show you nothing is guaranteed in the National Hockey League. And man, what a free fall for them. Can they recover from this? I know we're early in the season, but can they?
I don't see why not. I mean, I still think we're at the point in the season that any team is eligible for redemption at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a team, right here, even especially the Canucks, who are the only team in the league that have yet to win a game. I don't see a reason as to why there's no team right now that can't get it together, get a couple of wins together. I mean, we all know how hockey plays out. You string along a couple of wins together, and next thing you know, you're rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right now, they if they could get on a roll and they could start picking up points left and right, I think they'll be fine. But they get the first. I think the first one is always the hardest one to get, Chris. So,
Well, I
we'll
mean,
have to
when
wait.
when your players are outwardly arguing with each other on the ice,
Yeah,
it's just okay. How bad is it? Now it's getting into their psyche because, like I said, like they're not getting.
yeah.
Well, at least to start the season, they weren't getting blown out. Let me check their past couple games. They lost to the Sabres 5-1. That's not a good win. So, I mean, here's their losses: 5-3, 3-2, 6-4, 4-3 overtime, 4-3 overtime, 3-2. So you're close. I mean, a lot of hockey games, that's the beauty of the sport, is you're always really in these games, and very rarely do you get blown out. They've had a 5-1 loss. Other than that, it's either a 1-goal loss or they have 1 2-goal loss to Washington. So they just got to turn it. But now it's just getting into it's mental now. It's all mental right now, and they're just going out there like, are we going to blow another lead? I hope we don't blow another lead. Can we win this game? And you're right. Once you get that first one down, they're playing Seattle and they're playing the Penguins. Okay, at home. Penguins are number 2 on our ranking for this week. So
I would highly suggest you beat Seattle. I would just say that.
Speaking of which, I think they did not move. They stayed put at 24, which still is the highest, because last year I don't think they got above like 28 or something like that.
Yeah, they were bottom dwellers all year.
You're not sold on the Kraken, are you?
No, I think they're where they are right now, and the fact that they didn't move, I mean, that speaks to how I feel about them. I mean, I look at their record 3-3, and I've been able to catch a couple of their games at certain points this year. And you know what they have going is good. There's a lot of potential for it to grow over this season. I mean, we said it last year. This isn't a bad roster. I mean, you look at some of the names. They're good players. There's a good foundation there. It's all about just building chemistry, getting it together, putting it together on the ice. And obviously we didn't see it at all last year. But this year you're starting to see it. You're seeing a team that's starting to really fight a lot, starting to bring a lot of grit, starting to hit back when other teams bring it to them. And that's why, but I think also with this, and that what I was trying to get to is with where they're the fact that they didn't move, and how I feel is a lot of people still aren't sold. You know, it's kind of like, yay, you know, you did good, but like, look, I want to see more. You know, I want to see that more down the road. So maybe at the end of October, we'll, you know, going on to our next rankings, well, actually the first week of November, maybe if they continue to win or put out good performances, at least we'll see a little bit more of a jump, maybe a spot or two. How do you feel, Chris? I mean, you see them a lot more than I do, obviously being in the West Conference.
Yeah, I mean, they beat Colorado and they looked good doing it. They didn't make Colorado look bad. It was a good game. So I think that's their like, can they do that? Can they make the other team look bad? Can they rise above the other team? Avalanche were right there, but Avalanche didn't play their game. They didn't play as well as they could have. And you have to give the Kraken credit. There you go, for capitalizing on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, but can they outperform teams? Is the thing. Like, can they, when you're playing those upper level teams, can they set the tone in some games and not just rely on that team not having their best game?
Right.
That we'll have to see. I know a lot of people are getting on them right now for Shane Wright not getting a lot of ice time. He's averaging like 5 or 6 minutes of ice time right now. And people are kind of like, you're young. I mean, if you make the playoffs, that is far exceeding expectations. So I think, you know, they're on the rise. So why not have Shane Wright, like, kind of just figure it out as your entire team is figuring it out and giving him a little bit more ice time? I don't know what the plan is for him. I don't know if this was what they wanted to do. And as the season goes on, just give him more and more ice time. But I know a lot of people are jumping on them for, like, throw him to the Wolves, just let him go, and they're not doing that right now. I don't know. I can see both sides of it, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I was never a big fan of rushing young guys, you know, onto the ice. I mean, when they're ready, they'll show it. So I don't have a problem with it.
We'll kind of turn it more towards the I wanted to start with the Canucks just because that's kind of a big deal, but the number one team, the Boston Bruins, that's a surprise to me. Not that they're number one on the list, but they're 6-1-0 to start the season. I don't think many people saw that coming. We're still at the point in the season where, will things level out? You would have to assume. So how we think the season's going to go. But who knows? The Bruins are off to a hot start, and you got to give them credit.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't with them being an Atlantic Division opponent. I didn't think that they were going to be anything special, especially with what their roster was looking like this year. Bringing back David Krejci out of the woodworks after a year off, and having Patrice Bergeron back. I mean, that's great. I mean, you look at who they've played thus far. Big win against Washington on opening night. Another big win at home against Arizona. A very big win against the Panthers. And, you look at some of the other teams like Dallas, who is in the top of our list as well. Detroit, a team that we've spoken about that is going to make a big jump this year. So, yeah, some very impressive wins. But I think, this goes back to the mantra that we've kind of been saying from the beginning of the show today is that, it's still very early. 6-1 could turn into 7 and, I don't know, 15 in a couple of weeks. So
right. Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with them right now being at number one. Me personally, like I for the first month of the year, unless like the team who's at number one, who rightly so, was my Colorado Avalanche. Like at least for the first month, if they're not just completely in a nosedive, like say they were performing like Vancouver, fine, moving them out of number one. I don't like moving that team out of the number one spot if they're still and the Avalanche are playing fine. I get it why people would move them down because the team that's at number one is just playing so very well right now. They deserve to be number one.
right.
But as far as these Stanley Cup teams go, my Avalanche stay put at 6. Your Tampa Bay Lightning have fallen a couple more spots. They were at 15 last week, and they have fallen to 17. And we said last week, well, let's give it a week and see where they're at. Still not good, is it?
No, it's not looking good, Chris.
Wow.
I mean, they're on a West Coast trip right now. They lost Tuesday night against the Kings. As we're recording this, they're going to play against the Ducks.
Yeah.
And then they have San Jose on Saturday. So, we were going into this road trip. I was talking on my show saying, fully expect them to win 2 out of 3. Kind of would like them to win all 3. Very capable of winning all 3. Thus far, not a good start. And I also said it, if they don't come in rolling, especially against these first 2 opponents in Anaheim and Los Angeles, I mean, you got Jonathan Quick and then you got John Gibson on back-to-back nights. So, even though those guys are, not at the top of the league in terms of goaltending right now, I mean, still have the talent to shut you out if you're not ready. And Tampa, no stranger to starting slow, and you've seen it. You've seen it over the last couple of weeks. And I'm not surprised by this. Tampa is very top-heavy right now. I'm not saying fire John Cooper. I'm not saying fire John Cooper this year or at all or anything.
Hashtag it. Put it out there.
No, it's more so hashtag trade everyone. Dive for Bedard. So I listen, every good team shows how good they are when they're at their lowest point, and Tampa's no exception. So, a lot could change. Like I said, with Boston, 6-1 could turn into 7-15, and 3-4 for Tampa could turn to 10-5. So we'll have to wait and see. And I'm sure that this group will figure it out. And I feel like the same way with a lot of these other teams. You have the Rangers, who kind of took a little bit of a dive. The Panthers, who are a very good team, kind of took a little bit of a dive. The Hurricanes, not as high as we know. I guess they're at a little bit of the area where we expect them to be. Your Avalanche, like you said, took a little bit of a dive. You're not worried about it. These teams are going to figure it out, Chris. There's going to be some surprises over the next month, but I don't think it's going to be anything catastrophic. I love the Stars, but I don't think the Stars will be number one.
Can stay there, right?
Yeah.
Well, do you feel like there's any teams that should be in the top 10 right now that are not?
I hate to say this. Well, I really don't, because I think they're a good hockey team. But
yeah,
I think, if they continue to play reasonably well or at par where they are thus far, I like the Red Wings, man. For someone
who's going to bring them up.
For someone whose team is in the same division and has to play these guys as much as the Lightning do, I'm very high on them right now.
I don't know. The Red Wings dropped from number 10 to number 14, and I don't really know why. I feel like they've done enough to stay in the top 10. I don't like Toronto being at number 9 at all. I don't really think Toronto deserves to be. I don't know how Toronto moved up from 11 to number 9. I
Right.
think they should remain kind of around there. And why not the Buffalo Sabres? The Sabres were one of the bigger
Yeah.
movers last week. They went from 20 to 13. So you have the Buffalo Sabres at 13, moved up to 13 from 20, and the Red Wings moved down from 10 to 14. I think both of those teams are kind of deserving right now of being in the top 10, if you ask
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
So, and even with Ottawa, where's Ottawa? Ottawa's at 18.
Yeah.
The two teams that have the longest win streaks right now are 4-game win streaks. Ottawa is one. Do you want to take a stab at who the second one is?
Detroit.
Chicago.
Yikes.
The Chicago Blackhawks have a 4-game winning streak right now, and they moved up from 29 to 20.
Yeah.
You and I were saying we thought the bottom feeders of these power rankings for the duration of the season would be Arizona and Chicago. That's why this game is a beautiful game. You have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't think if you told me that Chicago would have a 4-game winning streak at any point during the season, I would have said, I'm going to find myself a new co-host. But hey, you got to give them a little bit of credit right now. And I think that's a mentality of like, nobody expects us to do anything. So we can just go out and skate. We don't have to worry about a damn thing. And I mean, they're winning right now. They're winning games.
Yeah.
14-0.
And can we talk about a team who, real quick before we wrap things up, who's not winning and who has just looked abysmal, especially the other night, where John Buchacross said they looked like trash out there. That was the Columbus Blue Jackets losing to the Arizona Coyotes 6-1. Like when he said that, I was watching ESPN, eating my cereal, getting ready for it, and he said that, I thought Captain Crunch was going to go all over my TV.
Did you do a spit take?
I almost did.
Yeah.
It almost came out, but this Blue Jackets team, I mean, the Lightning got a taste of them recently. I mean, there's a lot of bark there with Johnny Gaudreau, and maybe you'll see some improvement with Patrick Laine coming back. But man, does this team look rough. I mean, I get it. Korpisalo's out. So, you have some of your big guys out right now, but still, I mean, come on. That's ugly.
That is a top heavy team if I've ever seen one. They have nothing below that top line. So, where are they right now?
They are at 27.
27. They moved up somehow from 30. So, Islanders, one of the big fallers. 19. They were at 19. They fall to 28. They're playing right now as we're recording this against the Rangers.
They're beating the Rangers 2-0.
Okay.
So, as we record,
right.
9 minutes left in the third. So,
all right. So, there you have it, everybody. So that's the next week of power rankings. A lot of movement going on, and we'll probably see even some more over the next few weeks before things maybe settle down. But I would love this every single week. Just craziness every single week. This is good stuff. So this is when the league is at its best, when you have teams like Chicago coming out of nowhere. Nobody's going to do anything, and they're winning games. So
I almost want Tampa to fall all the way to 30 so I could just have a complete meltdown on this show.
Your ratings would be as high as they've ever been if Tampa fell to 30. I would want to be a guest on your show and I don't have to say anything. I just want to sit in on mute the entire time if you were to fall to 30.
You already get me worked up, Chris. You already get me worked up.
Tune in to Danky Dank in the mixtape on Locked On Lightning, because he is fired up. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Locked On NHL. It's always appreciated. Thank you for making it your first listen of the day. Let's, if you're on YouTube, we'll blow these power rankings up full screen for the last few seconds so you can get a good look at them. Where's your team rank? You happy? You upset? You angry? Fire away in the YouTube comments. Until then, everybody, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with a fresh batch of power rankings. How will things shape up for next week? You have to tune in to find out. For Mr. Adam Denker from Locked On Lightning, I am Chris Maselli from Locked On Avalanche. Thanks for tuning in to Locked On NHL.